Hi guys, so our group was assigned age group 0 to 10 years old. So I have an 8-year-old cousin and we began thinking of things that she enjoys doing, such as dance, specifically tap dance came to mind. We as a group thought this would be a really interesting occupation to analyze since none of us knew much about it. Here's the video we recorded of her tap dancing for this activity analysis. Tap dance is a type of dance that involves the use of shoes with metal heels and toes. When these shoes strike a hard surface, they create a percussion-like sound, and these sounds are then used to create a rhythmic tapping combined with music. Tools needed for this occupation include tap shoes, as they are what distinguish tap dance from other forms of dance. These shoes, like I said before, have metal heels and toes to create a noise each time your foot strikes a hard surface. It is beneficial to also be in comfortable, loose-fitting clothing that allow you to move around easy. Tap dance is typically performed in an open room or area with hard flooring. Practices are held at a dance studio where these rooms are available, and performances or recitals are typically done on a stage. However, this activity can be done anywhere there's hard flooring and space to move around. We wanted to learn more about why this occupation was important to my cousin, so when we asked, "Why do you like tap dance?" her response was, "I like to move and dance, and I like the sound of the shoes." We then asked her, "How would you feel or what would you do if you could not tap dance anymore?" Her response was, "I would be really sad." From these responses, we as a group categorized tap dance as a leisure occupation. Leisure occupations can be described as occupations that are non-obligatory, in which an individual is motivated and seeking participation in their own time. Tap dance is not something my cousin has to do, but is something she enjoys and does in her free time. Dance therapy or movement therapy is defined by the American Dance Therapy Association as the psychotherapeutic use of movement to promote emotional, social, cognitive, and physical integration of the individual for the purpose of improving health and well-being. This can have multiple benefits when incorporated in OT. In an article focusing on the benefits it can provide for individuals with Down syndrome, it concluded that participation in movement therapy allows them to develop proper movement patterns, strengthens muscle and bone, alleviates health problems, socialize, and lead a fuller life. Another study examined the benefit of dance on individuals with scoliosis, and in this study, all the participants noticed a positive effect on their body awareness and reported improved balance. Using dance as an intervention allows for upgrading and downgrading based on the type of dance, use of equipment or props, and the music being played. For example, one way to upgrade this occupation would be play faster music, making it more difficult to dance to and stay in sync with. Another way to upgrade dance would be incorporating props such as silk dance streamers. This would increase the difficulty because it engages more of the upper body and requires more coordination to prevent getting wrapped up or tripped by the streamer. To downgrade this activity, you could play slower music, making it easier to stay on pace and incorporating movements that aren't as complex, or you can have them stay in place instead of moving across a stage or moving around a room. Having them stay in place makes it a little bit easier. Some major steps of tap dancing include 1. Put on comfortable clothing. 2. Put on your tap shoes. 3. Attend tap dancing class. 4. Play music. 5 follow movements provided by instructor of the class. In this video, she's swinging her arms away from the body, rotating in a circle while swinging the arms and tapping heel on the ground, and continuing to tap the heel on the ground 1 foot at a time.
There are many key joints that are used throughout the video by the tap dancer. Starting in the shoulder, the scapulothoracic joint is used to stabilize the scapula while the humerus is moving in many directions. The sternoclavicular joint is important for protraction of the scapula, and this is a saddle joint, so it has 2 degrees of freedom. The glenohumeral joint allows for abduction and adduction of the shoulder, along with flexion and horizontal adduction, which can be seen in the video. This is a ball and socket joint, and it has 3 degrees of freedom. In the arm, the humeral ulnar joint is important. It allows for the constant extension of the elbow throughout the entire video. And this is a hinge joint, so it has 1 degree of freedom. In the hip, the coxal joint is important. This allows for hip flexion, external rotation, and hip adduction, which can be seen throughout the video by the tap dancer. This is a ball and socket joint, so it has 3 degrees of freedom. In the leg, the tibiofemoral joint is important. It allows for knee flexion and extension. This is a modified hinge joint, so it has 2 degrees of freedom. And then lastly, the talocrural joint. It is important for dorsiflexion during the heel taps by the tap dancer. This is a hinge joint, and it has 1 degree of freedom.
There are many contractions that are occurring at the key joints in our tap dancing video. There are concentric, eccentric, and isometric contractions taking place. Concentric contractions can be seen when the muscle is being shortened, and eccentric contractions are taking place when the muscle is being lengthened. And then isometric contractions is when there's no visible movement at the angle of the joint. So for one of our first key joints, we have the glenohumeral joint. And at this joint, there is a concentric contraction that is occurring as the pectoralis major and the deltoid are allowing for shoulder abduction and horizontal adduction. This contraction is occurring when the tap dancer is moving her arms away from midline and then horizontally during the beginning portion of her dance routine. The next joint is the humeral ulnar joint, and this is an eccentric contraction. Her upper extremities, including her muscles attached on the humerus and ulna, are extended. Therefore, this is causing a lengthening at the muscles, making it an eccentric contraction. The next joint is tibiofemoral, and this is a concentric contraction occurring. As the knee is in flexion, it is causing the hamstring muscles to be shortened, while the quadricep muscles are in an eccentric contraction because they're being lengthened. But then, when the knee's in extension, there is a concentric contraction occurring in the quadricep muscles, and then an eccentric contraction occurring at the hamstring muscles. And then the last key joint we had was the talocrural joint, and this is a concentric contraction at the muscles, such as tibialis anterior, which is allowing for dorsiflexion to occur whenever she is tap dancing. And then there were a few isometric contractions occurring in the video that were not listed out as key joints in our analysis, but I wanted to go ahead and touch on those. So the atlas and axis joints, the tap dancer is keeping her head and her neck stable without movement as she's not rotating or extending or flexing her neck, causing there to be a static contraction, making it isometric. And then there's also an isometric contraction at the MCP, PIP, and DIP joints. Her digits are all stable in extension throughout her dance routine, so therefore this would be an isometric contraction as well.
There are many muscles involved as the dancer performs her tap dance, but we will talk only about the prime movers. So in the shoulder, the serratus anterior and lower trapezius work together to allow upward rotation of the scapula, and this can be seen as the dancer swings her arms up by her ears. Later in the video, the serratus anterior works alone to allow scapular protraction, and this can be seen as she brings her arms out in front of her. The anterior deltoid and pectoralis major work together to allow shoulder flexion, and the middle deltoid and supraspinatus allow shoulder abduction. The pectoralis major and latissimus dorsi work together to allow shoulder adduction, and then the pectoralis major and coracobrachialis work together to allow shoulder horizontal adduction. In the arm, the triceps brachii are used throughout the video to allow for elbow extension. In the hip, the iliopsoas are used for hip flexion, and this can be seen as she does the heel tap. The piriformis is used for external rotation of the hip, and the adductor magnus is used for hip adduction, which can be seen as she brings her legs together before rotating. In the leg, the hamstrings are important for knee flexion, but specifically the biceps femoris, and then the rectus femoris is important for knee extension, which can be seen as she performs the heel tap. And then finally, the tibialis anterior. This allows for dorsiflexion, which can be seen also as the dancer does the heel tap.
Postural control plays a really big role in our dance video and keeping trunk stability while our dancer is tap dancing. So the main muscles that are involved in trunk stability are the rectus abdominis, transverse abdominis, and internal and external obliques. This is allowing for her trunk to be stable and remain upright so that she is able to dance and perform the movements that she needs to using her trunk. Her internal and external obliques are also flexed. This allows for her to laterally rotate in a circle. During one of the steps during her dance routine, she is seen laterally flexing her trunk when she is leaning from left to right during different movements throughout her routine. Her trunk is also an extension in the dance when she's placing her hands on her hips, and also when extending and abducting at the shoulder. The trunk is in slight extension. This can be seen from the longissimus, iliocostalis, and spinalis muscles. And then maintaining balance is also a big factor under postural control. So in the dance video, she's having to lift one leg off the floor to tap while the other leg is keeping balance and positioning the rest of her body. This is using her quadricep and hamstring muscles, and these muscles are activated when she's standing and having to balance on one leg that is planted on the ground. And then there was an article that I found that I wanted to share by Moyer, Zimkova, and Tren, and this article looked at various types of dances in relation to the importance of postural control. So trunk movements and dancers, it's important because the dancers perform precise, flexible, and postural exercises during their training, and these exercises can impact and be necessary to help maintain postural control. So one aspect that they looked at was comparing dancing barefoot versus heeled dance shoes. So dancing barefoot showed greater lumbar lordosis and an anterior pelvic tilt, while dancing with shoes with heels, especially in adolescence, they showed could eventually lead to postural disorders such as forward head posture and lumbar hyperlordosis. And then her pelvis is the last main part of her postural control, and her pelvis is in a neutral position, and this helps to maintain her upright standing position. So using her anterior abdominals, erector spinae group, and the internal and external obliques, these muscles are pulling her pelvis upward, while the gluteus muscles, hamstrings, and hip flexors are pulling her pelvis downward. So this upward and downward pulling of the muscles is keeping her pelvis in that neutral position.
Just to add to what Kirsten had said about posture control, I would like to talk about base of support, center of mass, and the changes that may occur during the task performance. So for the majority of the video that we showed you in the beginning, the base of support for our tap dancer is narrow. For short periods of time, the tap dancer's feet are both placed closely together on the ground. Most of the time, the tap dancer is moving in a spinning motion with one foot dorsiflexed and the other in neutral. While one foot is tap dancing, she is placing her base of support onto her other foot, which is less stable. At the end of the clip, the tap dancer's base of support widens as she moves to her right and then narrows again. The center of mass changes as her arms were moving to and from the body. Also, the center of mass changed as her hips flexed and the lower arms moved away from her trunk during performance. Having a narrow base of support can impact her trunk stability and ability to maintain balance during tap dancing. Although the majority of the time her base of support is narrow, it is important that she maintains a slightly wider base of support to provide her more stability during performance.
There are both open and closed kinematic chains that are seen throughout the dance. The dancer's arms are constantly open chains because the distal limbs are continuously moving. Where the legs alternate between open and closed chains, the leg that is stable and on the ground, that would be considered a closed chain because it is not moving, whereas the opposite leg would be considered an open chain as it swings and rotates. But the legs alternate back and forth between open and closed kinematic chains throughout the video.
Both external and internal factors are playing a role in the tap dancing video. So an external factor in this case would be gravity. The tap dancer is already having to navigate within her environment of the dance studio, and then along with that, the force of gravity is factoring in here as well. So during her dance routine, the force of gravity is being impacted all throughout the video, and as seen in the video, she is able to maintain the muscle strength to be able to perform the routine, the different movements and motions and muscle contractions that she needs to, all against gravity. And then internal factors would be her beliefs and values, and both of these could also impact her view on the occupation of tap dancing as well. So it could look at different aspects such as the dress or the clothing. And then leverage is also a key point and impacts both of these factors as well. So in this video specifically, she is not utilizing any props that could have an effect on her leverage. However, if there were props used while tap dancing, such as streamers or maybe a purse as part of a costume, it would then be important to utilize leverage to help hold the props more easily.
Next, we're going to talk about the contextual dimensions. Under that, we would have spatial environmental context. So tap dancing requires arm width space for performance and practice. Movement is mainly in the feet, but the tap dancers do use their arms to create other effects. We also need to make sure that we have enough space in between each tap dancer, that way no one hurts themselves. Also, the performance dance floor matters too. So dancers need to know how to navigate themselves around that area so that they don't fall off. Many dance teams map out the floor with tape. I know that when I was on a step team, we mapped out the floor with tape. That way we each knew how far apart we were, and so that we knew that we wouldn't be closed up by the curtain. So that can prevent injuries as well. Let's see. So during practice, casual, cool clothing is recommended, such as leggings, shorts, t-shirts, tanks, and sports bras of some sort. Anything that's appropriate that you may wear out in public. Sports bras sometimes. I know people that go to the gym wear sports bras, so I guess that would still be appropriate for tap dancing class. But the type of clothing that you really need is just clothing that allows for maximum movement. Wearing baggy clothes, that is considered casual and cool, but in the tap dancing world, you don't want to wear it just for the simple fact that it doesn't really allow the instructor to properly critique the dancer. So the baggy clothes cover up somewhat of the movement that the tap dancer is doing. Like, the clothes aren't form-fitted, so you can't really tell how the dancer's body is flowing through the movements. Clothing is also dependent on the meaning behind the performance. Usually females wear short dresses or leotards with tutus, as you can see our tap dancer is wearing in this slide. And also sometimes they usually wear nude stockings with them. Male tap dancers usually wear a three-piece suit, but like I said, that is also all dependent upon the theme of the performance. Tap dancing shoes are usually either black or tan, and they're somewhere between 1 to 2 inches in heel size. Hair accessories could be used as tools. Hair accessories may be needed to prevent their hair from getting into their face if they have long hairs, such, hair bands, hair ties, whatever you want to call them, and like headbands, just something to hold the hair back out of the face so the dancer can really pay attention and not trip up or anything like that.
Another part of the contextual dimension is the temporal context. Tap dancing can be participated in during any time of the day and the week as desired by the individual. There are various types of dance classes to attend, but this video in particular is showing a tap dancing class. There may also be particular time frames that an individual attends, and these class times could be arranged to be a certain time frame or over a period of time. The duration of the class can also vary depending on the type of class that is being performed, as some classes may meet for longer periods of time and more frequently, while others may not be held for the same length or as frequently during the week. The class in the video is participated in for 45 minutes and meets once a week. The sequence and pace of this dance also varies and is dependent on the style and type of dancing. The music that is being played during the dance could also vary and be at different speeds or have different tempos. The pace of the occupation can also vary based on the music and the choreography of the dance. The pace during this particular tap dancing video is moderate speed and is steady, and there are repetitive and coordinated movements and a steady rhythm. Tap dancing is unique in that it involves specific and rapid footwork, so keeping on the steady rhythm and quick movements of the feet are a large component of tap dancing.
Now we're going to talk about sociocultural dimensions. Many cultures participate in tap dancing. Most of the tap dancing culture comes from African American slaves and Irish servants, and it's usually accompanied by jazz music. Music, the dances, the clothing, and the resources used may vary depending on the culture. Relationships can be formed between the tap dancers and their class, also with their instructor. Forming relationships can be very beneficial for the dancer and the overall dance routine. Forming bonds within the dance team can reflect on the dance floor. You can usually really tell when a dance team is very solid in their foundation. Travel tap dancing may form relationships with others from all over the world. Creating relationships with other dancers may provide the individual with different viewpoints on how culture and beliefs can impact tap dancing and other types of dancing. People of all ages are able to perform tap dancing for fun and for competition purposes. Tap dancing is also not gender specific. Dancing is a form of expressing oneself. Although it is not gender specific, there is a high volume of females compared to males, but anyone is welcome to participate. Now we're going to talk about the cognitive dimensions of tap dancing. As a tap dancer, the movements made are to be very precise. When working with a group of tap dancers, they will need to be in sync with their movements and the sounds that they are producing with their tapped shoes. Depending on the level of tap dancing class, it may not require as much attention. For example, a beginner's class may only focus on the fundamentals of tap dancing. To upgrade the routine, the instructor may incorporate spinning, the use of arms, and other moves, such as jumping. Learning a routine can be more challenging for some people and easier for others. For a person who may not have any experience or a dancing background, tap dancing could be harder to learn. However, for those who have experience with dancing, it may be easier for them to pick up on. Coordinating the movements may be a challenge for someone with cognitive deficits. The cognitive task demands may change over time as the level of difficulty changes within the class or the performance. For example, high school age group tap dancing groups are known to perform costume changes during performance, and they may run on and off stage depending on if they're supposed to or not. Also, the younger kids usually perform in place while the older kids and adults move during performance. A person with cognitive deficits may have difficulties with completing the higher levels of tasks during that class. Now we're going to talk about sensory dimensions. Sensory dimensions of tap dancing include vision, hearing, and touch. The performer will need to utilize vision during tap dancing to be able to follow along with the instructor's movements and to view what movements they are performing themselves. Usually a mirror would be nice so they can view the movements that they are making themselves. Vision is also used to know or see the amount of space there is between each performer and or the stage that they're performing on. You need to know the amount of space in between each performer because it is very important that they do not run into each other or cause one another to get a possible injury. Hearing is also important, especially here in tap dancing, because you are literally tapping your shoes and you are listening to the sound that is being produced. It needs to also be in sync with the next tap dancer or the whole tap dancing crew that you are, tap dancing with. It can be very noticeable when a tap dancer is off their routine or not in sync with the other dancers. And additionally, touching occurs whenever the feet are continuously tapping the ground. And in different levels of tap dancing, you may be required to touch one of your tap dancing members, such as like to lift them in the air or just to catch them or stop them for whatever dramatic scene that it may be occurring.
The emotional dimension is another dimension that is looked at, and emotions play a really big role in dancing, and expressing emotions while dancing is a way for dancers to tell a story or express and release emotions, any stress that they have, or just different emotions that they may be feeling while dancing. And this is an occupation that can be participated in for various reasons. So an individual could simply just enjoy participating in this occupation for fun. It could be for athletic purposes or also competitive purposes. So this emotion could change based upon the reason behind the participation for this occupation. So, for example, someone who is competing or is performing in different recitals may be more stressed and not as calm when they're just practicing on their own or practicing outside of actually performing in front of an audience. But this could be the total opposite for somebody else. So for our individual in the video, she finds this occupation to be fun. It's a leisure activity for her. It makes her excited. It makes her happy. And she really enjoys participating in the recital. So that piece for her is not necessarily as stressful, but fun. And the fact that she gets to dress up in different costumes and be a part of that in front of an audience is fun for her, but it could be totally opposite for somebody who may not enjoy that aspect of dancing.